Brr. A crying pup grabbed the Alpha King's cloak. They're hurting my mom, and he lost control. The forest whispered under a gray sky, its trees bending as if burdened by a secret. Shadows stretched long across the narrow road that led to the heart of Vaindrel, a kingdom ruled by the Alpha King, Kale. Known for his iron rule and unwavering control, Kale's name alone sent shivers through villages. Some feared him. Others revered him. But none were truly prepared for the moment a small hand would grasp his cloak and change everything. Pup had been running. Barefoot and trembling, he darted between roots and rocks, the wet mud sticking to his small feet. His chest heaved, lungs burning with every desperate breath. Behind him, the shouts of men and the cruel laughter of the village's guards followed. Desperation. Pup's eyes, wide and fearful, darted ahead. He had to reach the road. Desperation. He had to reach someone who could save his mother. Kale's horse moved swiftly, hooves thundering against the stone path. The wind tossed his dark cloak around him, a symbol of his authority and power. Kale's sharp eyes, like those of a wolf, scanned the edges of the forest, ever alert for threats or signs of weakness. It was not often that anyone dared approach him, let alone touch him. Yet here he was, riding through the mist, when a tiny hand shot out from the shadows. The boy clutched Kale's cloak with desperate strength, eyes full of tears and fear. "They're hurting my mom!" Pup's voice cracked, small yet piercing. Desperation. Kyle froze. The forest seemed to hold its breath. The child's plea carried a weight that no command or authority could dismiss. His jaw tightened. Desperation. Control was everything to him. Reason, discipline, and order. Yet in that moment, something inside him shifted. A pull, deep and raw, tugged at a part of him he had long hidden, the part that remembered innocence, vulnerability, and helplessness. Desperation. The guards behind him hesitated, uncertain. No one had dared challenge Kale so directly in decades. He dismounted with swift precision, his cloak slipping from Pup's fingers as he knelt to meet the child's gaze. Bert.
"Tell me," Kale said, his voice low, almost gentle, though still commanding, "who is hurting her?" "My mom."
"They took her," Pup stammered, voice trembling. "They said she owed them, but she didn't."
Desperation. They're hurting her. Please, please, help. His tiny body shook as tears streamed down his dirt-streaked face. Kale's hand clenched into a fist. Anger surged, wild and uncontrolled, but beneath it was something far stranger. Compassion. He had seen suffering before. Yes, but never like this. Never from someone so small, so powerless, so pure in their need. "Where are they?" he demanded, voice sharper now, a controlled edge beneath the storm of his emotions. Pupe swallowed hard. "The village by the river." "Please, mister, please don't let them hurt her anymore." Kale stood towering over the boy, the forest around them growing darker as clouds shifted. His mind raced. The village was near the river, yes, but it was also cursed. No one went there willingly after sunset. Whispers of dark magic, of shadows that preyed upon the innocent, had long made the village abandoned in all but name. And yet the child's fear was real. Too real. Kale's wolf instincts, ancient and precise, flared. He would not ignore this. "You will ride with me," he said finally, his tone firm, commanding obedience. Pup nodded quickly, almost falling over in relief. Kale caught him with a strong hand, lifting him onto the horse before mounting himself. Breathe. The child's small frame trembled against him, yet Kale felt an unexpected warmth. He hated admitting it, but it mattered. The boy mattered. As they rode, the forest seemed to close in around them, mist curling around Kale's cloak like living fingers. Inspiration. The wind carried whispers, but Kale paid them no mind. Inspiration. His focus was on the boy, on the urgency of his plea. He could feel fear radiating from Pup, like heat from a flame. Inspiration. And in that fear, Kale felt his own control slipping. Mr. Kale asked after a while, his voice softer now. Because you're big, Pup said, glancing up with wide, tear-stained eyes.
You look like a king.
Inspiration. They call you the Alpha King? Kale's jaw tightened. Brr. He did not often hear such words spoken with admiration or hope. Usually, people bowed out of fear, not trust. Brr. Yet here, in the middle of a cursed forest with a trembling child in his arms, Kale felt something unfamiliar. Responsibility, not just for the boy, but for the injustice that had reached him. The village came into view, shrouded in a gray, unnatural mist. The houses were silent, but the air itself seemed to pulse with tension, as if the buildings remembered the wrongs done within. Brr. Kale dismounted, placing Pup carefully on the ground. The boy clung to his cloak, reluctant to let go. Berate. Stay close to me, Kale warned, eyes scanning the shadows. Do exactly as I say, and you will be safe. They moved through the village, and the first signs of the curse became apparent. Windows were cracked and dark, doors hung ajar, and the faint glow of unnatural light flickered from within a small stone house near the river. Kale could sense it. The magic was alive, watching, waiting. Inspiration. He felt the pull of it in his chest, a dangerous allure that threatened to consume him if he faltered.
Inside the house, Pup's mother, Elara, was bound by threads of dark energy that shimmered like smoke in the dim light. She lay on the floor, weak and frightened, yet her eyes lit up when she saw Kael.
Pupe whispered, clutching at his mother's arm. Kale stepped forward, his presence commanding, yet his mind raced.
The threads binding Elara were not ordinary. They were ancient, layered with curses meant to punish and control. Kael had fought such magic before, but never intertwined with such raw human fear. Stay behind me, Kale instructed Pup. His voice was steady, but inside, a storm raged. The magic felt alive, challenging him, tempting him to lose control. He could feel his wolf blood burning within, his instincts screaming at him to tear through the enchantment with force. Yet he restrained himself. Rage alone could destroy, but he needed to save, not harm. With careful precision, Kale laid a hand on the glowing threads. He closed his eyes, drawing upon both his human resolve and the wolf blood that surged within. Power collided with power in the air, crackling and bending around him. The rune seemed to pulse with every heartbeat, every breath, every flicker of the boy's fear.
And then it happened. A shadow moved within the threads, a whisper of darkness shaped like Kale's own past mistakes, mocking him, daring him to falter.
Pup clung tighter to Kale's cloak. Don't let them hurt her, he said, voice breaking.
Brr. Something in Kale's chest cracked. Rage, fear, love, and fury collided.
His control, the thing he prided himself on, began to unravel.
He had always been the alpha, unshakable, untouchable.
Yet here were the child's plea echoing in his ears and the shadow of a curse before him. Kael felt his heart pounding in a way it had not in years. He closed his eyes, letting himself feel it all, the fear, the desperation, the need to protect. And then, with a roar that shook the room, he unleashed a controlled surge of his power, striking at the shadow with precision born of both instinct and experience. The threads shimmered, weakened, but did not break.
Kale opened his eyes to see Pup's mother still bound, still struggling, and his own hands trembling with exertion.
He had fought the shadow, but it was clever, patient, and cunning. It was not done.
Pupa looked up at him, eyes wide with hope and fear. Please.
Hush. Please don't stop, he whispered. Kale knelt beside the boy, his dark eyes locking onto Pup's. Barash. He felt something unfamiliar, a bond forming, not of blood or duty, but of shared need and trust.
He would not let this darkness win!
Desperation. Not now. Not ever. But even as he thought this, a chill ran down his spine. The shadow and the threads moved differently now, as if learning, adapting. Kale realized, with a sinking feeling, that the magic was more than just a curse. It was alive, intelligent, and intimately connected to his own past. He looked down at Pup, small and trembling against him, and whispered, almost to himself, "I will not lose control. I cannot lose control." But deep inside, he knew it was already slipping. And as the first tendrils of night fell over the cursed village, Kale understood the truth. Saving the boy and his mother would cost him more than he had ever imagined. The forest outside seemed to wait, watching, holding its breath. And in that silence, Kale realized something terrifying. The shadow had not yet revealed its full power. And when it did, even he might not be able to stop what came next.
The village lay in uneasy silence under the dim light of a sun hidden behind thick clouds.
Pretense. Every step Kale took echoed on the wet cobblestones, heavy with the weight of neglect and magic. Houses leaned as if tired of holding themselves upright, their windows darkened like eyes refusing to see. A faint fog wrapped around the buildings, curling into doorways and alleys, moving almost as if it were alive.
Pup's small hand gripped Kale's cloak tightly.
His tiny feet stumbled over stones and mud alike, but he did not fall. He had too much fear, too much need to protect his mother, for anything else to matter. His voice trembled as he whispered, They locked her in the cellar. She's very weak. She hasn't eaten for days. Kale's jaw tightened. Rage rose again, but he forced it down, letting the wolf within guide him. His power could destroy this village in an instant, but that was not the answer. He needed precision, cunning, and control. He needed to save the innocent, not destroy them. The cellar was at the far end of the village, a low stone building half buried in the earth, shadowed and oppressive. As Kale approached, he noticed the faint shimmer of dark energy flowing from its windows. The air around it tasted bitter, thick with old magic. It pulsed, alive, almost mocking him. "Stay behind me," he said. "Do exactly as I tell you." Pup nodded quickly, shivering, but his eyes shone with trust. That trust, fragile and precious, made Cale's chest ache in a way he had not felt for decades. They moved closer, and Cale could feel the curse's presence wrapping around the building. Bray. It was clever and cruel, layered with old enchantments that forced fear into those it touched. Even now, Cale sensed whispers in his mind, echoes of the village's pain and suffering. He had fought curses before, yes, but none like this. This one fed on helplessness and despair. Pup's voice broke the silence. Brrr. She's scared. She keeps saying it. She keeps saying Operation. Why me? Why us?
Cale's hand clenched into a fist.
Burse. She is strong, he said quietly, though his own heart questioned whether he was right. The village had been a place of darkness for decades, abandoned to shadows, and yet Pup's mother had survived. That alone spoke of courage beyond measure. Inside the cellar, Elara stirred, weak but alert. Her eyes, clouded by pain and fear, brightened when she sensed Cale's presence. The threads of dark magic that bound her shimmered, twisting and writhing like snakes. She tried to rise, but the curse held her firmly, feeding on her fear and despair. Cale knelt at the threshold, feeling the power of the curse pressing against him. Breath. He placed a hand on the stone wall, drawing upon his wolf blood, letting the raw strength of his lineage surge within him.
It pulsed in harmony with the fear and hope radiating from Pup and Elara.
His control, which had been his greatest strength, began to waver. But in that fragility, he found clarity.
The curse had a voice, though it did not speak aloud.
It whispered in Cale's mind, ancient and cunning, testing him.
You cannot save them.
You are too late. You always fail. Cale's teeth clenched. He refused to give in. I do not fail, he whispered to himself, though the shadow of doubt lingered at the edge of his mind. He had spent decades mastering control, yet this curse was different. It did not attack the body. It attacked the heart, the mind, the very soul. Pupe stepped forward, small but resolute. Please, sir, you can save her, right? You're strong. Cale looked at the boy and felt something break and mend all at once. Pup's courage was not naive. It was fierce in its simplicity. The child's hope was raw, a beacon in the oppressive darkness. Cale knew then that he could not falter, not for the boy, not for his mother, not for himself. He reached forward, placing both hands over the dark threads. The magic shrieked, reacting to his presence, twisting and turning as though it could feel his intent. Cale focused on the warmth and trust emanating from Pup and the quiet strength of Elara.
He let his wolf instincts guide him, not to destroy, but to untangle and unravel the curse.
Breath. The threads hissed and flared, resisting him. The curse was clever, adaptive, born of old sorcery that knew Cale's own lineage. He realized with a chill that this was not merely a punishment for the village. It was personal, tied to a choice he had made long ago, a choice buried deep in shadow and memory. Pupe's grip tightened on Cale's cloak.
Don't let them hurt her, he whispered again, his small voice trembling but unwavering. Cale felt a surge of raw emotion.
Rage, fear, and a desperate longing to protect collided within him. His wolf blood pulsed, heat radiating through him, yet he restrained himself. Anger alone would not save her. Only focus, strategy, and his full strength combined with his humanity could. The threads recoiled as Kale's power pressed against them, but the curse was alive, moving as if aware. Inspiration. Shadows flickered across the cellar, whispering of his failures, taunting him. Kale's control slipped for a moment, his hands shaking with the effort. Brr. He realized then that the curse was not just holding Alara. It was testing him, measuring his will, probing his weaknesses.
Hold on, Kale muttered to Alara, though she could not hear him through the thick magical binds.
Brr. He turned to Pup. Stay behind me. I am not done yet. Pup nodded, biting his lip, trying to hide the tremor in his small body. Kale drew a deep breath and let himself feel every emotion. The fear, the anger, the hope, the need to protect. Inspiration. In that emotional storm, a strange clarity emerged. He could not fight this curse with force alone. He needed something more. Compassion, empathy, and a bond stronger than fear.
He extended his hand toward Pup, who pressed it against his small shoulder.
A spark of warmth ran through Kale, anchoring him. The boy's trust was like a light in the darkness, guiding him, reminding him of what he was fighting for. Kale closed his eyes and focused on the bond between the boy and his mother. He reached out with both body and spirit, letting his wolf instincts harmonize with his human emotions. Power surged through him, not as a weapon, but as a tool of liberation. The threads shrieked and writhed, but Kale held firm, channeling strength into focus and purpose. A flicker of movement caught his eye. Brrr. Shadows shaped like twisted memories of his own past arose within the threads, mocking him. Kale recognized them. The mistakes he had tried to bury, the harsh choices made in his youth as a king who valued control above all else. Inspiration. They whispered, "You cannot protect them. You cannot save her." Inspiration.
You always fail. Kale's eyes blazed with determination.
Inspiration. I do not fail, he said aloud, and the words carried more than defiance. They carried truth, hard-earned from years of ruling, fighting, and surviving. He pressed further, letting his wolf blood guide his precision. The threads shivered, weakened by his combined power and empathy.
For a moment, Alara's eyelids fluttered, and she reached out weakly toward him.
Cried out in relief, gripping Kale's cloak tighter. Yet the shadow of the curse remained. It moved differently now, learning from his every action, adapting to his strategy. Kale understood then that this was more than a test. It was a battle of will, a clash of past and present, fear and courage, power and compassion. The room seemed to pulse with every heartbeat, every breath, every flicker of light and shadow.
Kale could feel the weight of centuries of magic pressing against him, the village's suffering entwined with his own past mistakes, but he could not falter.
Not now. Not ever. Pup's voice broke through the tension again. Please!
Please don't stop, he whispered, eyes wide, voice small but unwavering. Kale knelt beside him, dark eyes locking with the boy's. The storm of magic and emotion swirled around them, but Kale felt the anchor of trust, hope, and courage in the child. He would not fail this boy. He would not fail Alara. He would not fail himself. But even as he focused, he sensed it. A new movement in the shadows, something alive, patient, and cunning. The curse was not just a trap. It was intelligent, aware, and intimately connected to Kale's own past. It had not yet revealed its full power. Kale's hand trembled slightly, the first crack in his perfect control. He pressed it against the threads again, focusing on the bond between mother and child, letting empathy guide his strength. The threads hissed and shimmered, resisting, yet responding. And then, a sudden shift. Something broke free from the threads. A whisper of darkness, shaped like Kale himself, emerging from the shadows. It moved with intent, circling him, watching him, testing him. Pup cried out, and Kale's heart clenched. He realized with a sinking feeling that the curse was not finished, that the true battle was only beginning, and that the village's pain was far from over. Kale looked at the boy and whispered, almost to himself, "I will not lose control." But deep inside, he knew the truth. The shadow had already begun to test him, to push him to the edge. And when it struck fully, even he might not be able to stop it. The village held its breath. The cellar pulsed with dark energy. Pupe's grip tightened on Kale's cloak. Alara lay weak but watching, and in that moment Kale understood something terrifying. Saving them would demand more than strength. It would demand everything he was, everything he had ever been, and everything he hoped to become. The storm of night pressed closer, and the whisper of shadows promised one thing. The true darkness had only just begun. The ruins beneath the village were silent, yet alive with shadows that moved like living things. Broken pillars rose from the ground like teeth, their surfaces carved with runes that pulsed faintly in the dim light. The air smelled of damp stone and ancient magic, thick enough to taste. Kale led Pup carefully, every step deliberate, his wolf instincts alert to the slightest whisper of danger. Pup clutched Kale's cloak tightly. He had grown quieter since entering the ruins, eyes wide with awe and fear. He had expected the cellar to be frightening, yes, but nothing like this. Walls that seemed to breathe, floors that seemed to shift under his weight, shadows that whispered his name.
And yet, he trusted Kale completely. The boy's trust anchored the Alpha King in a way that nothing else ever could.
"Stay close," Kale whispered. "Do not wander." The shadows here are clever. Burst. His small hands trembled, but determination shone in his eyes. "I won't leave you," he said. Kale's jaw tightened. There was something about the boy's courage, born of desperation and love for his mother, that cut through his usual control. Kale had ruled kingdoms with fear and authority, but this was different. He felt emotions he had buried long ago, rage, guilt, longing, and they surged inside him like a storm he could not tame. At the heart of the ruins, the air thickened. The runes glowed brighter, and Kale sensed the presence of the shadow that had resisted him in the village. It was alive, intelligent, and patient. The creature that had tormented Alara and Pup's village was not just a curse. It was a reflection of Kale's own past mistakes, twisted into something sentient. He stopped abruptly. The shadow coiled around him, moving faster than the eye could follow. It whispered, cruel and mocking, "You cannot protect them. You always fail. You are weak." Kale's hands clenched. Rage and fear collided inside him. Raw and unfiltered. He had faced enemies before, humans and monsters alike, and he had always emerged in control. But this was something different. This was a test of his heart, of his ability to feel and act without losing himself. Pupe tugged at Kale's cloak. "Don't let it hurt my mom, please." His voice broke, small and fragile. Yet in that fragility lay immense strength. the strength of hope, of love, of courage that refused to yield. Bird. Cale knelt beside the boy, locking eyes with him. I will not let it, he promised, though his mind screamed with the effort to maintain control. Bird. But you must stay still. Trust me. They moved deeper into the ruins, each step heavier than the last. Shadows slithered along the walls, shapes shifting with every heartbeat. Cale could feel the creature probing, testing, adapting to his every move. It remembered the strength he had used before, and it was ready for him. Finally, they reached a chamber at the center, a circular room lined with ancient stones that glowed faintly, bare. In the middle, a figure moved like smoke, dark and twisting, its form familiar yet warped. It was Cale himself, or at least a version of him shaped by anger, fear, and mistakes long buried. The shadow spoke in a voice that was Cale's own, but crueler, sharper. You are not enough, Beration. You have failed before, and you will fail again. You cannot save them. Beration. Cale's fists clenched. He could feel the wolf within, demanding release, urging him to destroy this reflection with raw power. But he forced himself to breathe, to focus. Destruction alone would not save Elara or Pup.
Precision, empathy, and strength combined were required. Step back, Cale ordered the shadow, though his voice trembled with unspent fury.
I will protect them. The shadow laughed, a sound that echoed through the ruins like breaking glass. It lunged at him, fast and relentless.
Cale met it with his own power, the clash of force and spirit sending sparks into the air. The ruins trembled under the collision, stones shaking, runes flaring. Pup crouched low, eyes wide with fear, yet he did not run. You can do it, he shouted, small but unwavering. Save my mom. The words struck Kyle like lightning. The boy's faith, unshakable and pure, became an anchor. Cale felt his control slipping. Yes, but not entirely. The storm of emotions inside him was powerful, yet it guided him instead of breaking him. He realized something he had not allowed himself to feel in years. He could be strong and vulnerable. Cale pressed forward, pushing the shadow back, yet it adapted with every movement, faster and sharper. The room felt alive, as if the ruins themselves were testing him, forcing him to confront every flaw, every regret, every loss he had buried under his crown. Then, a sudden cry. Pup's mother, Elara, had appeared at the edge of the chamber, her chains flickering with dark energy. She tried to reach Cale, but the curse held her fast. Pup cried out, running forward, but Cale held him back. Stay, he shouted. Do not come closer. I won't leave her, he cried. His courage, small but blazing, gave Cale a surge of strength he had not anticipated. It reminded him why he fought. Not for glory, not for control, but for those who could not defend themselves. Cale turned back to the shadow, drawing upon both wolf blood and human resolve. His power surged in a controlled wave, striking the shadow with precision and force. The creature twisted, shrieking, adapting again. But the bond between him, Pup, and Elara held firm. It was more than magic, it was connection, trust, and love combined. The shadow recoiled, giving Cale a brief opening. He lunged, striking the threads binding Elara. Light burst forth, golden and pure, pushing back the darkness. For a moment, she was free. Pup ran to her, clutching her hand, tears streaming down his face. But the shadow was not gone. It shifted, faster and darker, now merging the forms of Cale, Pup, and even Elara into twisted shapes. It was clever, relentless and patient. Kale realized with a sinking heart that it would not stop until it had tested every ounce of his strength and courage.
Kale, Elara whispered, her voice weak but steady. It's still there.
Kale's chest tightened. He had thought victory was near, but the shadow had grown stronger, feeding on his emotional turmoil. Rage, fear, guilt, and longing surged through him like wildfire. He felt control slipping, something he had never allowed to happen in decades of ruling and fighting. The shadow struck again, more violently, tearing through the air with force. Kale countered, but the collision sent him stumbling backward, his control wavering. The wolf within roared, demanding release, urging him to destroy. Yet Kale restrained himself, focusing on the connection, on the bond that had guided him this far. Pup! Clutched Kale's cloak, shouting, "You can do it! Don't give up!" The words pierced Kale's heart, raw and true. He realized that this battle was not just about defeating a shadow. It was about proving that strength could coexist with care, that power could exist alongside love. Kale pressed forward again, letting the wolf blood and human heart merge into a single force. He struck the shadow, this time not with rage, but with clarity and purpose. The shadow shrieked, twisting and writhing, but the bond between Kale, Pup, and Elara held fast. For a moment the ruins fell silent. The shadow recoiled, retreating slightly, but it lingered, aware, intelligent, and alive. Kale breathed heavily, sweat and energy mixing on his brow. His hands shook from exertion, but he felt something new, a recognition of his own limitations. And yet a sense of hope. He could falter, but he could rise again. Pupe ran to his mother, embracing her. Kale watched, chest tightening. He had protected them, for now, but the shadow had shown him something he could not ignore. His control was never absolute, and sometimes power alone could not save those he loved. The ruins seemed to pulse around him, whispering that this was only the beginning. The shadow, clever and patient, had learned. It would strike again, testing him further, probing the cracks in his heart and mind. Kale knelt beside Pup, placing a steadying hand on his small shoulder.
"You are safe, for now," he said. "But this is not over."
The shadow, it will return. Pupe's small eyes filled with tears, but there was courage there too. "Then we'll fight it together," he said. Kale looked at him, and for the first time in years he allowed himself to feel it fully. The weight of responsibility, the surge of protection, and the awakening of something long dormant. Hope.
But even as he smiled faintly at the boy, the shadows shifted once more.
Kale felt it deep in his chest. A chilling reminder. The shadow was still learning, still growing, and his control, as steady as it had always been, was beginning to slip beyond his grasp. The ruins trembled, the runes flickering, and the air thickened. Kale's wolf instincts warned him that the next move would be the most dangerous yet. He could feel the shadow studying him, waiting for the moment to strike again, when fear or doubt might be enough to tip the balance. And in that moment, Kale understood a truth he had never fully accepted. Being an Alpha King was not about absolute control. It was about knowing when to act, when to trust, and when to surrender to the bonds that gave strength.
Pup's voice broke through his thoughts. "We can do this, right?" Kale knelt, pressing a hand to the boy's head.
"Yes," he said, though his voice carried both certainty and warning. "But we must be ready, for everything that comes next." The ruins seemed to pulse around them, alive with unseen eyes. Kale's control was tested, his emotions raw and exposed. Yet, in the heart of the shadows, he found a spark of something new. A connection, a bond, and a reminder that even in darkness, courage and love could endure. Bird. The throne room of Kale's castle had never felt so alive or so haunted. Breaths. Shadows danced across the stone walls, twisted by the flickering light of torches. The air pulsed with an electric tension, as though the room itself could sense the battle about to unfold. Duration. Outside, the kingdom of Vaindrel lay silent under a gray sky, unaware that its Alpha King was confronting a force that tested every ounce of his strength, heart, and resolve. Pup clutched Kale's cloak, standing close to the king as the shadows moved in strange, unpredictable patterns. His mother, Elara, remained nearby, still weak, but standing tall with quiet courage. Both child and mother drew their strength from one another, and Kale drew his from them both, a bond that had grown over days of fear, hope, and trust. The shadow had returned, more cunning than before. It had learned from Kale's previous attempts, twisting itself into shapes that reflected not only Kale's fears, but his regrets, his guilt, and his past misdeeds. It surged with darkness, coiling around the room, whispering in voices that were both familiar and cruel. Bert.
You cannot protect them. You will fail.
You are nothing without control. Kale's dark eyes glowed, wolf blood simmering beneath his skin. He felt the raw urge to destroy the shadow, to tear it apart with force and dominance, but he knew that rage alone would not win this fight. But curse had already tested his power. Now it tested his heart. He knelt, placing a steady hand on Pup's small shoulder. "Stay close," he said. Pup nodded, eyes wide, holding on to him with trust that anchored Kale more than any magic ever could. Elara stepped forward. "Kale, you don't have to do this alone," she said, her voice calm yet strong. The shadow hissed at her presence, recognizing her courage as a threat to its control. "We're with you." "All of us." Kale's heart clenched. He had spent years believing that power was about control, that strength meant isolation. But now he understood something deeper. True strength came from connection, from protecting those who could not protect themselves, from trusting bonds that could anchor even the wildest storm. The shadow roared, a sound that shook the castle walls. It lunged at them, moving with terrifying speed, taking on forms of Kale's past mistakes, faces of those he had failed, whispers of fear and doubt. The wolf within him stirred, primal and fierce, urging him to tear through it with raw power. Kale breathed deeply, focusing. He let the rage rise, but not consume him. Instead, he combined it with compassion, trust, and the strength of the bond he shared with Pup and Elara. His hands glowed with wolf blood energy, his eyes shining with controlled fire. The shadow recoiled, sensing that this was no longer a battle of power alone. It was a battle of heart. "Kyle!" Pup shouted.
You can do this! You're stronger than it!
Kale's chest tightened at the boy's faith. It was a simple thing, yet profound. This trust, unshakable and pure, gave him clarity. He stepped forward, not with violence, but with intention. Every movement, every pulse of energy was precise, aimed at unraveling the shadow rather than destroying it. The shadow twisted violently, forming a mirror image of Kale, taller, darker, filled with malice.
You are weak! It hissed.
You cannot save them. You are nothing. Kale met it with steady eyes.
I am more than you, he said. I am strength, and I am care.
I am not perfect, but I will protect those I love. The words seemed to weaken the shadow. It shrieked, twisting in ways that defied logic, yet the energy radiating from KL, Pup, and Alara combined into a golden light that began to push the darkness back. Parade. The castle walls trembled, the torches flickered, and the air shimmered with the clash of forces. Shadow and light, fear and hope, past mistakes and present courage. Inspiration. Pup ran forward, holding his mother's hand.
We're with you, KL!
He shouted.
Inspiration.
Alara smiled despite her weakness and added, "Together we are stronger than it." Kale's wolf instincts surged, but now they were tempered with humanity. He let the bond of trust, courage, and love guide him.
Inspiration. The shadow hissed, attempting to mirror the golden light with darkness, but it could not match the strength of unity.
Every shriek, every whisper of malice faltered against the combined will of the three.
Inspiration. Kale focused, letting his control flow not outward in force, but inward in clarity. He reached out to the shadow, not as a foe to be destroyed, but as a part of himself to be confronted. The shadow twisted, showing memories of his past misdeeds, the choices he had made in the name of control, the mistakes that haunted him. But Kale faced them, acknowledging each one without shame or denial. I cannot change the past, he said aloud, but I can choose the present. Braid. I will protect them. I will not fail again. Inspiration.
The shadow recoiled violently, shrieking in rage. But the golden light grew stronger, fueled by hope, courage, and connection.
The threads of dark magic unraveled, losing their shape, their purpose, their power. The shadow faltered, hissing one last warning before dissolving into nothingness. Kale fell to his knees, exhausted, his hands trembling, wolf blood energy slowly fading.
Pup ran to him, throwing his small arms around Kale's neck.
You did it! The boy cried. You saved her! Alara joined them, placing a hand on Kale's shoulder.
Inspiration.
You saved all of us, she said softly. Not just my son and me.
Percet. You saved yourself, too.
Kale's chest ached, not from exhaustion alone, but from the weight of realization.
Barash. He had fought not just the shadow, but his own fears, regrets, and the walls he had built around his heart. And for the first time in decades, he understood that power alone did not define him. It was his ability to care, to protect, and to trust that made him whole. The ruins outside the castle seemed to breathe in relief. The oppressive shadows that had haunted the kingdom began to fade, replaced by a calm, golden light that hinted at renewal. Kale looked at the boy and his mother, their eyes shining with gratitude and hope. He felt something stir inside him, something he had not allowed himself to feel for years. Peace. Pup's small voice broke the quiet. Inspiration. Will it come back? Kyle shook his head gently. Inspiration.
The shadow may try again, he admitted, but it will not find us unprepared.
Inspiration.
And it will not have the strength that comes from this bond.
Together we are stronger than it.
Alara smiled faintly, brushing mud from Pup's clothes.
He's right. Darkness can come, but light is stronger when it shines together.
Kyle allowed himself a rare smile, placing a hand over Pup's and then Alara's. I lost control, and yet I feel more in control than I ever have. Control does not mean fear. Protection. Control means knowing what to protect and how to protect it. The castle seemed quieter now, as if acknowledging the end of the battle. Outside, the kingdom of Vaindrel stretched into the distance, its forests and rivers catching the faint light of a sun breaking through the clouds. Cale felt the weight of his crown, no longer as a burden, but as a responsibility tempered by understanding. He had learned that true power was not about domination. It was about connection, protection, and courage. Pupe looked up at him, eyes shining. "Do you think it will be okay now?"
Cale nodded. "For now," he said.
Inspiration. "And even if it returns, we will face it together. Fear may come, but so will courage. Inspiration. Darkness may rise, but so will hope."
Hilara reached forward, her hand brushing Cale's, an unspoken gratitude and respect passing between them.
A quiet bond had formed, not rushed or forced, but rooted in shared struggle and triumph. Inspiration. Cale realized that his heart, once so guarded, was no longer closed. It could care, it could protect, and it could love. Inspiration. Not recklessly, but with awareness, with strength tempered by compassion. Inspiration. "Can we stay together?" he asked softly. Cale knelt, resting a hand on the boy's head. "Yes," he said. "We will stay together." Inspiration. "We are stronger as one." For the first time in what felt like centuries, Cale allowed himself to breathe fully. The shadows had tested him. The curse had tried to break him, and his control had been challenged. But through it all, he had discovered something greater, that the heart, when open and brave, could overcome even the darkest magic. Inspiration. And as the sun began to rise over the kingdom of Vaindrel, casting golden light over stone and forest, Cale, Pup, and Alara stood together, a small but unbreakable family. The kingdom remained vast, the world still filled with dangers and shadows, but they had faced the storm and emerged stronger, bound not by fear but by love, trust, and courage. Cale looked over the horizon, chest tight with emotion. I lost control. And yet perhaps this is how power is meant to feel," he whispered, a promise to himself and to those he protected. The shadow was gone for now, but Cale knew the lessons of courage, compassion, and redemption would stay with him forever. And in that understanding, the Alpha King found something he had never expected: peace, hope, and the beginnings of a new chapter.